Merry Christmas. Today I gotta piss off some people because I just felt like it. Okay. If you hear audio mix up stuff, for some reason the last couple of videos my audio is fucking up, even though when I do the testing it was just fine. But for whatever reason when I do the upload something fucks up. I hope this time it's not the case. So if the talk about Christmas. Well, I mean, I don't have much of a strong opinion about the origins of Christmas. I'm more in the middle ground about, there may be some syncretism between traditional folk pagan religions and their respective regions and the original Christian ideas, right? It's not far fetched to say certain traditions like gift giving has existed in the Roman Empire, way before that. December 25, affiliated with the Solstices, the pagan gods, and the holiday. The Christmas tree, based off Viking, Jule tradition and other, similar things, right? Like I don't have much of a strong opinion on that matter, but I just have to piss off some people today because I felt like it. We can research the things. For example, I have this book called Christian Mythology: Revelations of Pagan Origin, the focus of various holidays. So yeah, besides the connection with Yule and solstices, well, for Yule for Viking, it was technically New Year's, not technically Christmas, but they had like three Yule events throughout December to January. So and the word eventually been adopted by Anglo-Saxons who would associate later with Christmas, when it got Christianized. And solstices for the Roman Empire gift giving as well. But regardless, let's go with the book Christian Mythologies, Revelations of Pagan Origins. And it's chapter 3 of the book called Christmas and the 12 Days. 40 days after Samhain, or All Saints' Day, the holiday of Christmas, in conjunction with Saint Sylvester's Day, December 31st, is marked by a set of pagan customs that Christianity has not entirely succeeded in smothering. In truth, Christmas unlocked the door to the key period of the calendar and some important rites of the medieval ages. The period known as the 12 days, extending from December 25 to January 6, or Epiphany, is characterized by a collection of rites and myths of unknown origin that has survived into the present day. Ignorance of medieval tradition partially explains the inconsistency of historians' explanation regarding these rites and legends. For Christians, Christmas celebrates the birth of Jesus, yet this anniversary was placed at different times, so a year before being fixed at December 25. Fun fact, in the East during the Byzantine Empire, Orthodox Christians, when they celebrate Christmas at the time, it was about Jesus' birth, it was about his baptism originally. In different eras, in accordance with various Christian religions, Christmas was originally attached to January 6, March 25, April 10, and May 29. The commemoration of Christ's birth on December 25 results from the seasonal and mythological association to pagan beliefs that are older than Christianity. The meals of the fairies and the Easter celebration. The celebration of Christmas Eve and Saint Sylvester are even today the most apparent pagan rites of the end of the year. They valorize the forces of the night as well as the power, the mysterious and marvelous associated with these is a well-known motive of the fairy meal found in certain medieval texts and folktales. We saw earlier that the butcher of worms in the 11th century penitential mention of the Feast of the New Year's as superstition custom. This is not the earliest mention of such a feast. A 9th century penitential speak of the celebration organized in the honor of the Parkai of the Fates at the same time of the year. Another later text mentioned distinct appearance of this ritual meal. You had done in your home what certain women had the custom of doing at certain periods of the year. You set a table home and place upon it food and drink. You had prepared these plates and 3 knives to offer refreshment. If it came to these 3 sisters, who were ceaselessly perpetrated by ancient foolishness, they called them the Parkai. The meals of the parquet presume in fact the ritual arrival of the fairies at certain times of the year. As the text says, they come so that they may find hospitality that will subsequently encourage them to hand out their gifts. These fairies visit the houses, examine the foodstuff that are set out, and satiate their hunger. If the meals earn their approval, they bestow favors upon their hosts. This is confirmed by the testimony from the 13th century folklorist Gervares of Tilbury. The same can be said with spirits who, in the guise of a woman, visit homes and pantries during the night in the company of another woman whose name is Satia. Satiel and also Dame Haponte, because of the abundance she is said to confer upon the homes she visits. This is the same common spirit that old wives call dames, and about whom they maintain this error to each creature is given even illusionary dreams. These old wives say that dames use up the food and drink they find in homes without consuming it utterly or even reducing its quantity, especially if the dishes holding these food are left uncovered. If these vessels holding drinks are not corked when left out for the night, but they are found covered, sealed, or cooked, the Danes will abandon these houses to find happiness and misfortune without granting them satiety or abundance. In Romain de la Rose, Jean de Meun classified as superstition that these nocturnal wanderings in the company of Dame Habonde. Many people in their 40s think themselves to be witches wandering the night with Dame Habonde. They all how one in free children share their ability to go out 3 times during the week. They force themselves in every house, fearing neither keys nor bars, entering by the chinks, cat holes, and cracks. Their souls, leaving their bodies, go with the good ladies through houses and yards, and they offer to prove it by saying the oddities they witnessed never came to them in their beds. So it must be that their souls were thus acting and running in the world. These nocturnal voyages present the quantity of phantasmagoria considered witches and wizards that invaded the imagination of the late medieval ages. After the 13th century, the Sabbath accumulated in this imaginary content of some composite pagan beliefs and myths that contributed mythical creatures closely related to the Celtic world. Ever on the lookout for magical beliefs that could serve its needs, the Church tried to divert the suggested powers contained in pagan myths. It founded a cult to Mary on the site haunted by fairies. The pilgrimage of Notre Dame de Abondance near Avion thus places under the authority of the virgin ancient powers of Dame Abondant, as we can see through the works of medieval authors, and transfer the power of the fairy to the Virgin Mary. Despite the abilities, beneficial maleficence, and their fairy figures should serve as a guarantor, the New Year's Day meal possesses a well-defined body character. He aimed to appropriate the beneficial forces that govern the cycle of time and permit the advent of fertility and prosperity, receiving a visit from fairy that this day was a good omen for the coming year. Such belief persisted well beyond the 16th century. In fact, the continuity between medieval tradition concerning this visit and modern folklore has been closely established, and Amori mentions one such Harini custom. The fairies, or hatas, enter the homes of those who worship them, carrying good fortune in their right hand and misfortune on their left. One must take pain to prepare the meal that should be offered to them in a clear and isolated room. The doors and windows are open, and white tablecloth is placed on the table among with a loaf of bread, a knife, a vessel full of water and wine, and a cup and a candle of tabor should sit on the center of the table. It's generally believed that those who offer them the best dishes can help to see their herds increase, their harvest abundant, and the fulfillment of the dearest wishes related to the nuptial bond. Whereas those who only reluctantly perform their duties during the fairies and who neglected to make preparation worthy of them should expect great misfortune. At daybreak on January 1st, the father, the elder, the master of each house takes back the bread that was offered to the fairies and, after dipping it into the wine and water, distributes it to his entire family and even the servants. Thus, wishes for the Happy New Year are made at one breakfast on this bread. Although Christianity did not maintain the custom of this meal with the fairies on the New Year's Day, we might wonder if the ritual of the Eucharist somehow substituted for this, remodeling its imaginary arrangement. A midnight mass is celebrated on Christmas, one of the two occasions of the year where mass, when theoretically should always be performed in broad daylight, can be celebrated in the middle of the night. For had this midnight mass supplement the pagan rite of communion meals with beings of the other world, the common presence of bread and wine in both in the fairies' meals and the rite of Christian communion serve to underscore a reference to the same sacred rite, one being placed under divine authority and the other under the fairies. Here again, Christianity borrowed pagan tradition and conferred upon it a new spiritual dimension. We should also note another characteristic of the fairy meal in medieval tradition. According to several literary texts, the meal with fairies is also held in the birth of certain predestined children. This is why fairies show up on the night of the birth of heroes such as Orgy of the Dane and William Shortnose, in order to endow these children with great virtues. Thus it seems entirely natural to fix the nativity of Christ on the night of the Mother or the night of the fairies, which the birth of a profane hero was already celebrated. The setting on Christmas, December 25, seems a clear association with the pagan custom of attaching the fairy repast to the birth of the ancestral individual. Indeed, many rites of Christmas find mythical counterparts in the folk memory that associate this predestined date with the word of fairy. On December 31st, Saint Sylvester's Day, or Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, appear as the twins of the same solstice-based pagan celebration. Both are nights of great danger during the course of which the tutelary presence revenant of the other world can manifest. The name Sylvester comes from the Latin silva, or forest, and Sylvester is comparative figure to the wild man, a king figure in pre-Christian mythology, and the archetype of the revenant in medieval tradition. Obviously, nothing in the life of this poor pope from the 4th century accounts for his savage name. Yet it was customary in the countryside to invoke his aid when threatened by an animal. This power Sylvester held over the animal's world makes it easy for us to glimpse the pagan background of his worship, especially as connected to his feast day. Contemporary Romans celebrate Saint Sylvester's Day and New Year's Eve by throwing out the window their chipped and broken dishes. They also set off firecrackers or shoot guns, much as other Europeans do on this day. We can note the same customs in Denmark, but their state purpose to drive away the elves and all the evil spirits that are particularly active on the night and to keep them from causing harm during the year to come. Another saint whose feast day is celebrated at the year's end is December 25 is Saint Anastasia, and her story might explain in part the din, breaking china, firecrackers associated with the celebration of Saint Sylvester's Day. The Golden Legend somewhat humorously recounts her imaginary rape by a Roman prefect. Believed he was assaulting the Virgin, he embraced the casseroles, the stew pots, the cauldrons, and the cooking utensils. All these are utensils used during the charivaris and other customs marking the arrival of the new year. When he came back to his senses, the text continues in the Golden Legend, he emerged all black with dirt and his clothes in shreds. His servants who were waiting for him after seeing him in such a state and putting him changed into a demon, greeted him with a storm of blows, then flee, leaving him alone. This geographic test transports into the context of the 12 days those Charivari rites practiced precisely at the end of the year. As we will see later, the 14th century Roman de Falfel provides the profane illustration of these Charivari customs. The din of St. Sylvester's Day has no reason for its existence other than to maintain these noisy practice at night of the year when they expect to assume their imaginary power. There's also the wild hunt. No medieval text is more explicit on the subject of the din associated with revenants than one recounted the advent of Messian Heliquin during New Year's Eve. An extract for the year 1092 from the Norman Chronicle, the ecclesiastical history of the Orderic Vital, makes it possible to rediscover the medieval mythological figure of Heliquin through the Foundry Wild Hunt. He is said to control Harlequin is the name given to the household of the king, the lord of the underworld, accompanied by his band of warriors, who were greedy for corpses. Appearing in this terrifying parade, accompanied by a deafening commotion, is a figure bearing a strange resemblance to numerous revenants and creatures of the otherworld evoked by great literary texts of medieval ages. In reality, this text depicts a central figure of all the medieval mythology. According to the medieval historian Orderic Vital, during the night of December 31st to January 1st, 1092, St. Sylvester's night, the priest of Benovella in the Organ region was returning home after visiting the sick when he suddenly heard a terrifying fracas and saw a flying army coming towards him. He tried to conceal himself near four medlar trees when a man of imposing sign armed with a club forced the priest to stand at his side. An entire wild army filled past the eyes of the terrified priest. First came to the infantrymen, carrying the fruits of their pillage. Then followed the grave diggers, carrying 50 coffins. The giant with the club accompanying them. Women on horseback followed, blaspheming and confessing their crimes. Then came clerics above, a bishop leading with the priest to pray for them, and then again still more victims. The priest quickly grasped that this was the mesme Harlequin, which he had never wanted to believe, despite the testimony he had heard concerning it. The priest had to step in the procession and stop one of the horses by burning his hand when he touched the harness. He subsequently fell ill, and the author of this chronicle claimed that he had seen his atrocities burned. The tradition, according to Orderic Vital, contains the composite of both pagan and Christian elements. A Christian patina covered the most authentically pagan motives, and this Christianization of the myth is obvious. The appearance of the tormented sinners bring to mind a kind of abundant purgatory, which guilty souls are forced to suffer punishment for their earthly crimes. Yet this Christian dimension is not strong enough to erase the pagan substance. The presence of a dark shine Ethiopians exposed the actual appearance of fairy-like demonic creatures of the medieval blackness. They are in fact the incarnation of revenants, a medieval literary or hagiographic representation of beings of the other world. The infernal commercial accompanying the conclave of revenant is alone sufficient indicator of its demonic and insane nature. Finally, the presence of a giant with a club exposes a deity of the other world that easily recalls the famous god with the mallet in Celtic tradition. In Irish mythology, this figure with the club is Dagda, or the good god. One end of his weapon kills while the other is resurrects. In all of these cases, we clearly found ourselves in the presence of a divine figure. The infernal commotion accompanying the caravan of these alone sufficient indication of this demonic and the insane nature. Finally, the princess of the giant with the club exposed the deity called the good god. One end at the resurrect, one hand to kill. All these cases clearly find ourselves in the presence of the divine figure of the great demiurge who Julius Caesar indicated was the principal god of the gods. There can be no doubt the unbroken thread of the motive of the wild hunt in these beliefs, and the folklore that had come down to modern era of the early medieval ages. Although in various 12th century texts is comparable to relatively modern folklore. There can be no doubt the unbroken thread motive of the wild hunt in the belief and folklore that came down to modern era from the early medieval ages. The 12th century compared to relative modern folk tradition, as well as passages from the life of Saint Samson from the 7th century that corroborate the existence of most likely even older belief. Alien Fourier, the author of the Grand Sen, was a native of Berry and knew the tradition of the Chase Guerrier or Guerrier's Hunt, another name for the Chase Guerrier, Chase Author, or Mesne Harlequin. One evening while he was taking part in the vigil at Kodesh in San Fran, a terrifying noise started the guests, held them petrified for a long moment. Only the young son of the master of the house got up. After opening the window, he hollered, "Guerrier, leave on your hunt and go to the devil." The commotion only grew stronger. Bones began falling through the chimney into the fireplace, and a cottage with the flames gave off a potential odor. They filled the entire the cottage. The legend concerning the Black Hunter, whose wild hunts ceaselessly haunt the forests of all Europe, shared the same belief. According to certain chronicles, King Charles VI, or IV, I keep forgetting which one, had met him in the forest of the Les Mans. This supposedly was the cause of his madness, and we can believe these testimonies. We might doubt the ancient nature of these beliefs. It was not for the existence of the entirely identical story of the life of Saint Samson that adapt the same mythical elements. According to the legend, Saint Sandolph, a journey that was crossing through the forest in the company of a young deacon. Suddenly, the two travelers heard a piercing scream through the forest air. In a panic, the young deacon fled with the Samson remain and made the sign of the cross. He then spied a shaggy, red-haired witch who was holding a hunting spear with three dins and a cave in precision she was flying through the forest. Samson pursued the old witch, which in the Latin text is described in Teumacha Giantess, a managed to destroy her, but not without having squeezed from her several secrets about her magical origin. This figure of the air taking part in the eternal hunt in the forest is none other than the deity of the other world, whose rules the wild hunt sometimes a woman, sometimes a man. Her is his most characteristic feature, gigantic aspect. The giant, primarily mythical figure, thus finds inside the heart of the myth of the wild 12 days by virtue of his or her highly ambiguous value. This figure is both a sovereign of the beyond, master of the passage of death, and a dispenser of life and fertility. Father Christmas. In the domain of folklore, the flying wild hunt announced in reverse the flight of Santa Claus slide pulled by reindeer. As for Santa Claus himself, he is simply a good-natured avatar of the mythical figure, a true distributor of abundance during the middle of winter and supreme master of temporal transitions. Santa Claus is nothing other than the fish figure of the wild man, the fairy figure from the other world who periodically visits men to give them gifts. Christmas is obviously a favorite time with the appearance of supernatural beings such as Santa Claus and Father Christmas. In his book Le Problème des Centaures by Georges de Museus gives a fine analysis of horseplay, the promenade of men horse through a village going from farm to farm in search of gifts such as simple wheat, oats, eggs, cheese, lard, sausages, smoked meat of the bay, and the custom of the permia is practiced certain days that are well known for their carnival-style rites. In Prussia, for example, the Rompitane, the man with the horse hat, permeated 2 or 4 times several days before Christmas, while in Natania the horse, accompanied by a goat, prometheus on St. Sylvester's Day, and in Tempelputz the play is reserved for the carnival that gives its name. In Hanover, the celebration takes place at Christmas, as it does in Bavaria, and disguised in certain towns in truly an fantastismo, a carnival horse. In other parts of Germany, there are even indicators of horse appearing during Advent. In Silesia, it appears as early as November 10. In Lusace, the promedian of the horse takes place on Christmas, and again, mainly a time of carnival or even from Christmas to carnival. The variation of these things only underscore the permanent nature of these recurring myths. The emphasis of the natural mythology equivalent of the 8 carnival-like periods of the year. We can conclude that the game of the horse is kind of a carnival rite, and the horse itself belongs to the rite midst of this transitional period, as for the same Harlequin itself. No satisfying etymology has so far been proposed. Yet, if we consider all the corroborated versions of this name, we find forms such as Hennequin and even Annequin. This happened to ene or ane, referred to bird in Old French. We record the aerial nature of this hunt, where the word queen is strongly reminiscent of the word for dog, and the creed stemmed from meaning dog, the word king. Perhaps then we can read the name and a queen as bird dog. This interpretation offers the advantage of providing a mythical basis for the legendary cynocephalic beings. Those figures with the heads of dogs, with many well be the origin of such figures dog-headed giants of Saint Christopher, who is also guide of souls. A legend of the wild hunt specified to Armoresian Brittany offers the significant association of the bird and the dog in folk version of the same myth. It recounts that one evening, spinners spy a woman flying through the air like a bird, pursued by a white dog and a black dog. Her, here we see again the bird and the dog, two animals folklore associated with the wild hunt. In the main region, the Chesequin, another term for the man is Heliquin, is composed of shrieking, invisible night birds. In Upper Brittany, the many equine includes carnivores that hunt and slay domestic animals. In order to clearly grasp this figure of the guy of souls, or psychopath, a warrior hunter, we must return the calendar, especially to the date of December 1, via the testimony of the 11th century Latin text. The blacksmith monk. The Son in honor of King Robert, Carmen and Roberto Regin, is a manuscript written by Adalberon, Bishop alone, in the first third of the 11th century. The text is the dialogue between King Robert II, who reigned between 996 to 1031, and Bishop Adalberon himself. The debate focused on public affairs, beginning with a general illustration of the revolutions that affected the church and the state. This is followed by the satire of the monastic, specifically Clunician Moors, then by the examination of the ecclesial hierarchy and the different castes of society. It ends with a plan of reform that is in fact characterized by cultural reform intended to fight the perverse effects of new ideas. Throughout this dialogue, Adalberon expressed extremely conservative position, where the king appeared to have been won over to the new ideas. Throughout the bishop endeavored to return the king to the path of tradition and conservatism without moderating or with his attacks against the mad reformers, such as Odilon, the most famous abbot of Cluny. In the text, we can read the curious portrait of the would-be reformers of the Cluny monastery intent to ridicule the life led within the great Benedictine abbey. A picture of Moors and nothing more, and not precise facts, written as commentators of the three-day battle waged by a Clunician militia around December 1 against Seraces that have in vain to Tours disease. This is pure burlesque. The casual nature of the story confirms it. Of course, in reading the text, we should be wary of overly categorical judgment. If we read further in the text, we can see the satire use details that come from what we know as carnival-esque folklore, and their insertion in extremely serious debate should not be caused to overlook their distinction nature. So let's be careful read over the subsequent portrait of the cloning monk. He wore a large booted made of Libyan bearskin. His trailing robe are now pulled halfway up his legs. He was split up in front, nor did we cover his behind. He strapped around his waist in a brawling baldric, tight as a tie could be possibly be. Hanging from his belt was a quantity of the most diverse objects: a bow with his quiver, a hammer and tongs, a sword, a flint, iron for striking, oak branches to be set aflame, pants clung to his legs, stretched to the length of them. He was skipping and hopping. The monk who had been sent on the mission to present himself to his former bishop as a soldier under the orders of Odilon, king of Cluny. The bishop then revealed to his former monk a situation concerned. The Saracens, the race of the most savage Moors, has invaded the kingdom of France sword in hand. They occupy entirely and are eating away at everything to feast the soil of gold. Everywhere vermilion blood moistures and reddish this earth and swell the torrents that are overflow from this excess carnage. This is the 11th century, and of course the appearance of the Saracens in Gaul, especially terrain at the heart of the kingdom, has no historical foundation. As been noted by an other modern scholar of this text, the Saracen invasion was long since over by this time, and the term Saracen is probably used metaphorically by Aldebaran to designate another category of people. But which people? To resolve this mystery of Saracens, we need to pay the heed to the date of the battle. All of this took place know this well on the first day of December, but we were again engaged in combat of the calends of March. The mention of the calends of December and March allowed us to better grasp the meaning of the curious outfit of the monk, as well as his apparent mock battle whose true purpose is carnival release. We should concentrate on the value of these days for the moment. There's also Saint Eligas and the Fire of December. December 1 was the feast day of Saint Eligas, a consort of Chlority II and Dagobert, and all exploit is attributed to him in his legend. He was said to have collected one throne from the gold provided him by King Clarendon, and another from the gold that was left over from the creation of the first. Thus the saint who is celebrated during the December calends is a goldsmith and a blacksmith, a specialist in working metal. So it so happened that the costume of the monk described and sung in the honor of King Robert include tools familiar to Smith: a hammer, a tongs, a flint, iron for striking, and an oak branch for the fire. We cannot overlook that Saint Eligius, commemorated December 1, was specifically a protector of horses. According to legend, he owned a fairly distinctive horse. In addition, it was said that he could regenerate himself by exposing himself to the fire of his forge, which harkened to the very old folklore theme in which Marcia Alias sees the sovereign of the mythical ritual scenario where the fire plays a part in the initiation ordeal. Thus Saint Eligius could be said to be an initiation master of fire. A great many toponyms in France came from the ancient name of Guaranda. Beneath this name was recognized a horse-like deity compared to Epona, which was Christianized most likely through the cult of Eligius. George Dumense has shown that in the same way as animals such as the bear and the wolf, the horse was perfectly integrated into the ritual of the 12 days, separate Christmas and Epiphany, and include the change of the year during the calendar of January. In Carinthian, this equine practice of the 11th century consisted of smiths with blackened face attended to shoe a horse. According to certain tradition, the phantom horse, accompanied by Odin and the band of Phileas Hunt, the wildest hare, came to blacksmith to be shod. The blacksmith monks of whom all the barons speak refer to his same tradition. Marcian Eliade reminds us that the blacksmith was connected to initiatory scenarios in male societies. It's probably to this entire ritual group that the disguise of the clumsy monk refers. The master of the forge fire is here joined with the legendary figure of diabolical sorcerer and the mythical figure of the shaman, whose mediates with the beyond. The traditions of December fire are quite ancient. Indeed, they were not foreign to ancient Rome. In fact, the month was placed under the protection of Saturn, god of time, and Vesta, goddess of domestic hearth. Maintained in her honor was a fire, never extinguished, that was lit in temples in the first room of each house, hence the word vestibule for the entrance room. The other fire traditions extend from this during this month. Traditionally, the Yule log must burn at least 3 days, hence the name tree fuel or tree fire in Brittany. Likewise, the festival of Early Santa are quite well known. The Saturnalia, during which people indulge in all manners of festivities, the cool version of the crude Saturnalia are visibly viewed as the original form of carnival. Interestingly, during the Middle Ages, they will celebrate a kind of Saturnius or Saturn on November 29th, the day before the eve of Saint Eligius Day. We can note the name's relationship to Saturn. This journey backwards in the calendar is necessary because the Celtic festival took place over 3 consecutive nights. Furthermore, Aldebaran's text specified the battle lasted 3 days. We thus find ourselves in the presence of new and discrete mythological survival. We can thus conclude that the distinguished of blacksmith monk is not present merely to be fictitious or comic. It is in fact connected to the ritual elements presented in the old calendar myth, which we find the stimulus appearance of the mythic black myths and the magical horse, and the rites associated with the reservoir of time marked by the solstice. A popular song offers strongly relevant reminder Saint Eligius restored everything to its place. This restoration assured by the saint can also be understood in terms of the calendar. During the Middle Ages, there were two Saint Eligius festivals, or two essential times of the year: December 1, near the winter solstice, and June 25, near the summer solstice. By supervising the solstice, Saint Eligius assisted the reservoir of the cosmos and ensured its own brilliant blossoming. Then there's December 6th, St. Nicholas Day. According to legend, Albert de Bargueville brought back from the Crusades an fanlash on one of St. Nicholas' fingers. This ran through numerous pilgrimages to Lorient, to Saint Nicolas de Port, near Nancy. The miraculous finger fits into the entire framework of ancient belief that certain names connected to Nicholas allow us to unearth. Nicholas was a bishop of Myre in Asia Minor. And interestingly, something interrupted outside. Eh, and that was a shout outside. Don't. That's not for me. Interestingly enough, in Old French, mirror means both medicine and doctor, which can explain the devotion that grew around this demurrage saint. While all saints are in fact miracle workers, the relic of Nicholas Finger possesses a remarkable distinguishing feature according to Talbot Limoges Dictionary of Old French. The figure commonly known as the ring finger is in medieval French the doimir, an old name by all accounts, considered the Latin author Macrobius speak of the Dicetes Medicinalis. Given the Haiti relic of the Bishop of Myre was a saint finger, and can be presumed to the old name, by all accounts, considered the Latin author Macrobius speak of Dicetes Medicinalis. Given the lily relic of the Bishop Maria was a saint figure, it can be presumed to have been this Dormire. In addition to his gifts as a healer, Nicholas was an excellent magician. This good phantom saved people who called upon his aid and sometimes brought them gifts, such as money offered to three young girls who were in danger of becoming prostitutes because their families were in need. This gift-giving is a trait preserved by the mythical Santa Claus, who flies through an air on sledge pulled by reindeer. As we have said, that was the saying as we said, Santa Claus Aerial Vigo is clearly related to the parade of revenants mentioned in the many tales concerning the wild. The folklore Santa Claus, who became Father Christmas, pushed to the forefront St. Nicholas' connection to the other world. Indeed, Nicholas is a genial passage, the distribution of abundance, and the guarantee of fertility, much like other saints of the same period, St. Martin, for example. He owns secret connection with celestial underground riches. In truth, Nicholas has a strong connection with the subterranean world. The element nickel was discovered in 1751 and was given to abbreviation of the name Nicholas. A mischievous goblin also shared a name with the saint. In mythology, goblins, like dwarves, are connected both of the world underground and its mineral wealth. In fact, the German word Kupfernickel meant copper goblin before it became the name of the element. Another form of wealth from beneath the ground is salt. The first site where the worship of Saint Nicholas was established in France is Saint Nicolas de Port, next to Varacanville. Since the Middle Ages, an important Lorient site for the extraction of salt, as said to remain people at this bond between Nicholas and salt. The church of Varacanville remains dedicated to Saint Gorgon, a martyr whose tortures salted his intestines. Saint Gorgon on Varacanville irreversibly brings to mind the Gargantua of Rabelais, whose connection to salt is well recounted in the novel. The most famous alchemist of the Middle Ages was named Nicholas Flamel, who had Saint Nicholas prompt him to seek initiation into secrets of alchemy. According to the Golden Legend, to win the revenge of Nicholas, who had broken her statue, Diana disguised herself as a nun and gave to sailors returning to the saint's home a highly combustible oil intended to destroy the sanctuary where Nicholas preached. Nicholas appeared to the sailors and had them burn this oil while still at sea. This disarmed this malevolent trap. Diana's magic oil might have this been the first appearance of petroleum in the medieval ages, probably, was thereby neutralized by Saint who deployed a Christian magic that was stronger than that of the pagan goddess. Behind this pagan deity, Diana, Dean Anna of the Celts, we can see the great goddess, protector smiths, bars, and doctors. The essential piece of pagan memory related to Saint Nicholas concerned the figure of Pere Fouettard, who regularly accompanied the saint on all of his visits to children in Alsace, Lorient, North of France, and Luxembourg. Pere Fouettard is a boogeyman, a true wild man, and hairy ghost with a red beard. In contemporary folklore, he is falsified witness of the Saint Pagan's ancestors. Fouettard's appearance brings to mind that all the wild men are carnival, or half man and half beast. He embodied the primitive world, for in fact he belonged to the other world as in one of its masters. He is a fairy ogre, a master of abundance and wealth, and the Plutonian god of the dead. But it is dispossessed of these positive features this new status as followers of the saintly bishop who lords over him. Saint Nicholas drags him along just as other saints do the masters and terrors they have tamed. Saint Nicholas confirmed his biggest ancestors' aspects of abundance. In Siberia, Mykolia is a god of both harvest and beer, and that is linked to drunkenness. The Russian verb Nikolishcha means to get intoxicated, as part of the posterity of Mikula. Nicholas and subsequent Santa Claus have become carnival-esque figures who distribute abundance during the year or during the heart of winter. The Christmas spruce tree, pine tree, and hawthorn or arbutus. The Smith's fire December is fed by a certain tree. Among the immeasurable rites of Christmas, the decorated spruce tree figured most prominently in the custom of decorating the spruce comes from Alsace, with the first incontestable testimony of the rite of Christmas spruce date from the 16th century. The account books for the town of Celestias on December 31st, 1521 mention an expedition of 2 shillings is paid for the forest guard members responsible for the severities of the wood that surrounded the town. This is a clue pointed to the fact that already at this time the true infatuations of families to the forest king was unusually accompanied by the looting of certain forests owned by the domain. In 1419 document from the municipal archives of Fribourg in Germany confirms this custom. In addition, since the Middle Ages, people had hung spruce branches called Weckerschussmaien, according to Christmas broths at this time of year. These were also well-known customs of raising spruce trees decorated with red apples, which were said to commemorate the fall of Adam and Eve on the parish of Rhenish churches. Here again, biblical allegory merged with the rite of pagan origin, which is no surprise, especially in this instance. The tree of the world of fairy became the tree of the earthly paradise, which is foliage that remained green even during the cold season. The spruce tree naturally became a symbol of immortality, ignored the gunshots outside, as the perennial nature and the nativity of the Savior. The spruce is one of the many in the large family of spine trees or bramble bushes around which have gravitated numerous legends, sharing a common origin and great myth. The rites of Christmas related to such plants can be understood fully only in light of the rites of May, the enhance the values of plants and trees. Wencesmalien can translate very literally as the May of Christmas. In fact, the customs of Christmas reproduce the rites of May 1st that consist of planting trees in front of certain houses. Generally speaking, the worship of trees was particularly hardy in the West before the coming of Christianity. One episode of St. Martin's life, as told by Sulpicius Severus, provides a particular corroboration of the substantial worship of pine tree in Celtic society. Marty had just destroyed an old unpierced temple without encountering any resistance, yet when he sought to uproot a pine tree dedicated to a local deity, the pagans initially opposed his effort, then suggested a kind of bargain. They said, if you had trust in your God, remain under that tree while we cut it down. Marty accepted and was bound beneath the tree on the side toward which was already leaning. When the tree was on the point of falling, Martin made the sign of the cross. Instead of collapsing on him, the pine fell in the opposite direction, just missing the pagans. With supreme skill, the Christian text clearly mentioned the mythic pagan role played by the pine before diverting into the Christian god the magical powers attributed to this tree by the pagans. In England, hawthorn is considered to be the ancestors of the Christmas tree. A pious legend is made the notoriety enjoyed by the shrub. Joseph Arimathea, who had taken the body of Christ following the crucifixion, was said to have ended up in Glastonbury, England, a major site in Arthurian legend. According to legend, he planted his staff in the soil of Christmas seed, supplementing a flowering hawthorn immediately grew on the spot. Until around the 16th century, the English offered each other as a Christmas gift a branch of the Glastonbury hawthorn that had allegedly grown from the staff of Joseph of Arimathea. It was said that it was always flown on Christmas Eve. On the 13th century French romantic title Dermot the Welshman, there appears a magic tree, sparkling with tiny flame, which Knight recognized as a manifestation from the land of Faerie, where we find otherworldly will-o'-the-wisp associated with sacred tree. The model of the illuminated tree appears in all occasions in medieval literature, confirming the existence of Celtic myth of thorn tree that has left trace in French place names such as Apennine, Apennal, and so on, as well as several pious legends. The Thorn of Evron in Mayenne confirms the magical value of the hawthorn in Celtic tradition. Behind the high altar of the church of Evron, there is highly artistic representation of a tree trunk, which takes the form of a pyramid with thorn-like branches that appear to grow from it. At one time, a statue of the Virgin was placed in a niche at the bottom of the trunk. A local legend explained why this site was made sacred. During the 7th century, a pilgrimage passing through Evron was carrying a relic of the Virgin he brought back from the Holy Land, because he was near collapse from fatigue. He sought to rest near a spring, having his reliquary in some nearby bushes. While he slept, however, the hawthorn bushes started growing out of all proportions and lifted the reliquary high off the ground. It was thought that this miracle, the legend concluded, that the Virgin let it be known that she wanted to be honored at this site. The founding of the Church of Varagli and the Mount Mosley is explained by the similar legend. During the 7th century, Pope Paul I gave relics of Saint Gorgon to Saint Protagan, Bishop of Metz and founder of Ghost Abbey in Mosley. Protagan reparaded them immediately into Lorient, leading a procession that soon found itself close to Varagiven. When nightfall forced them to halt, the reliquary was hung from thorn bush from safekeeping during the night, but the next morning all could see the bush has inexplicably grown, moving the reliquary out of reach. This miracle was interpreted as a sign from heaven, and church dedicated to Saint Gorgon was immediately constructed on the site. Taken literally, these pious legends from the Hawthorne would be both naive and fruitless. Viewed them as falsified testimonies of old pagan myths seem much more in keeping with the strangeness. In any case, such legend cast decisive light on the profane origin of our Christmas tree. Analysis of the Rite of Christmas is revealed to be particularly fertile ground for understanding the myth and mysteries of this period. Again, it is necessary to have at our disposal the text that gave it the language of the rite's profound consistency. Christmas clearly belongs to the enchanted time that allows the other world to break into and enter the human world. The Christian translation of this settlements allowed the archaic memory that Oriental holiday to poke through the surface. In truth, Christianity extended paganism. By introducing another kind of logic into the pagan elements, it preserved or by scaring the explosive symbol of myth over the wheel of time. That is the origin of Christmas. And also, fun fact before I end this video, and I don't want to sound like an edgy Reddit new atheist, well, giving my distaste for religion, but I just found out that Eastern Orthodox Church has a doctrine now that encourage nuclear war, and which is very Warhammer 40KS. So yeah, fuck the church.